George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
I saw the Prince of Darkness and his staff standing bareheaded at the cenotaph, the annual parade of hypocritical British Prime Ministers, 6 of them for the first time, their faces waxed with fake grief, their poppies ever larger, pulling them over to one side as they fiendishly contemplate their next victims, their next war, whilst pretending to mourn the last ones. And who are you going to believe, me or the evidence of your own eyes? 2 tips from Amsterdam. And the battle for Donald Trump, the battle for the Donald Trump presidency has begun. And so far, it's going quite well. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
The Prince of Darkness himself, Tony Blair, responsible for 1 million dead, thousands of them British service personnel, in wars that he chose to fight and to join, which had nothing to do with us, which were entirely the wrong thing to do in response to international events, was there at the cenotaph with the little princelings and Princess Liz Truss. They were, I had almost forgotten Theresa May. She was there too. 6 British Prime Ministers, each of them responsible for the needless deaths of British service personnel, each of them supporting whatever the next war their successor is planning to join. Keir Starmer, the war criminal. Keir Starmer, the key participant in the genocide of the Palestinian people, in the mass murder of the Lebanese people. We now know 70% of the deaths in the Gaza Strip and in Lebanon are women and children. And guess what? The largest segment by age of those murdered in Gaza and in Lebanon are children between the ages of 5 and 9. Never mind working 9 till 5, 5 till 9 is the largest single group of people murdered, children murdered in the atrocities being committed by Sir Keir Starmer, the current British Prime Minister. But he will have had the wholehearted support of the waxen hypocrites standing all around him in Whitehall today. It is a perfectly proper ceremony. I myself have participated in it. It is perfectly proper to wear poppies in remembrance of those who fell in wars, wars that had to be fought and wars that should never have been fought, the World Wars II and I respectively. It is entirely correct to remember the victims of conflict. But when the people leading the commemoration are people who are currently involved in mass murder across the globe and contemplating, joining, even fomenting still greater conflicts, the only word is hypocrites, in the words of my national poet, Robert Burns, in his ode on the occasion of a Thanksgiving. Ye hypocrites, are these your pranks, to murder men and gie God thanks? Halt, desist, and go nae further. God will no accept your thanks for murder. That's my words on the National Remembrance Day parade today. The conflicts, of course, continue to burn in the Middle East. The big conflict with the Islamic Republic of Iran hangs in the balance, and the massive conflict that these leaders themselves fomented as a matter of deliberate policy in the Ukraine, and 1 million Ukrainians have paid with their blood on the ground, is not just hanging in the balance, but precariously dangling by a thread. The battlefield successes of the Russian military, and perhaps above all, the incredible result of the American presidential election last Tuesday, which led to our biggest ever audience on the mother of all talk shows. My monologue was clipped by no less than Ricky Gervais and achieved 200,000 views on his platform, as well as millions on our own platform. That incredible victory by Donald Trump, the biggest landslide in American political history, when the gaslighters and professional liars of the mass media told you right up to the middle of the night that Kamala Harris had it in the bag, that the convicted felon, that the sex pest, that the rude vulgarian, the orange man, the straw-headed man, all the epithets of liberal journalists and politicians all came to naught. The American people rose up. They rose up almost as one. Donald Trump, as predicted exclusively here, I've been checking, I am the only person that you heard broadcasting the prediction that Trump would win the popular vote and a landslide victory in the Electoral College vote. You came to the right place. This is the College of Knowledge, because we here understand the mass of the people, whereas the other commentators and their political cohort listen only to those in the bubble. They confuse what they want to happen with an honest prediction of what is much more likely to happen. It was the working class of America what done it. The working class, the marginalized, the alienated, the despised. It was they who voted for the human Molotov cocktail that is Donald Trump. The outcome, of course, is far from guaranteed. The defeat of Kamala Harris and the so achingly progressive liberals of the Democratic Party was necessary, but it is not sufficient. What will be sufficient is if Donald Trump stays true to the election campaign that he ran in 2016 and again this week in 2024. If Donald Trump genuinely puts America first, he will make America great again. But if Donald Trump plucks the monsters of the deep swamp and puts them around his cabinet table once more, he will be diverted, perverted, subverted from his purpose. It's a big battle, and it's already underway. A huge lobby by the military-industrial complex and their intelligence auxiliaries was launched to put Mike Pompeo either at the Department of State or at the Department of Defense. The former Secretary of State, former head of the CIA, is a much thinner man these days, but he is fat with his reputation for killing, for subversion, for spying, even on the American people themselves. He openly admitted it. He said it in a speech. We lied, we stole, we cheated. He could have added, we planned to murder Julian Assange on the streets of London outside of Harrods. There was a big push for Mike Pompeo, but it failed. And Donald Trump last night, in an unprecedented statement on Twitter, effectively sacked Mike Pompeo before he had even got appointed to anything. Maybe there's a vacant ambassadorship in Ulaanbaatar. No, that's too dangerous. Somewhere much farther away. Ouagadougou would be good for Big Mike as the ambassador of the United States. Trump sacked him on Twitter before even appointing him to any job. Ditto Nikki Haley, the half-unhinged, crazed warmonger who turned on Trump, who ran against Trump, who insulted Trump in the most obscene terms, was nonetheless keen to get a job in his administration. Trump sacked her on Twitter also. But that doesn't mean the battle has won. It will only be won when Colonel Douglas McGregor is the Secretary of Defense, when Tulsi Gabbard is the Secretary of State, when Robert F. Kennedy is in charge of gutting the three-letter agencies and the FDA as well, the Food and Drugs Administration, which has presided over the making of America as the sick man of the world, the most expensive healthcare in the world for the sickest population in the world. In Kennedy's own words, the most profitable business in America is a sick child, a child that will be dependent on Big Pharma for the rest of their life. When that happens, then I'll be confident that Donald Trump will make America great again. It will only be great again if it withdraws from the foreign wars, the foreign entanglements, the never-ending wars in which the United States has been involved for almost every year of its short existence as a state. The United States is falling apart, deeply riven, fatally undermined by lack of investment in the public realm, in the bridges, the roads, the railways, in the public education and public health systems. The people of America have had enough of sending tens, hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign potentates like Netanyahu, like the crook of Kiev, Volodymyr Zelensky. They've had enough. If they were asked by the IRS, door to door, give me your money for Zelensky, they'd slam the door shut on the tax inspector. That is for sure. The Americans have had enough of how things have been. And they're right so to be. And if Donald Trump responds to that, then he will be doing himself, historically, a very great favor. He will be doing the American public an even bigger favor, and he will be doing the world the biggest favor of all. As I said on Wednesday, we love you. We really, truly love you. We love your can-do spirit. We love your music. We love your movies. We love your sports. We love your scientific and other achievements. We love you. But we don't want to be you. We don't want to be ruled by you, and we sure ain't going to war over and over and over again at your behest. If Trump heeds all these calls, he will be a truly great president, and he will be able to name a successor with some degree of confidence that his advice will be heeded, especially if the successor has the same name as him. Yes, Donald Trump Jr., I'm speaking to you. But if he falters and fails, then his second term will be as blighted as his first term was, and by the same bad actors. The second great battle that was won this week in the battle for Donald Trump's ear is the great statement that he made about internet freedom, about freedom of speech. Again, he had no need to make it. He might well have counseled himself that no need to provoke the serpents of the deep, even before I have taken office. But he did it. He declared that America was going to be the free speech capital of the world, that he would never again tolerate big tech strangling the First Amendment. He would never again tolerate the American government dictating to big tech who it must falsely label, who it must close down, who it must algorithmically strangle. And I think if he remains true to that, that may be one of the biggest services of all that he can do humanity. We may well get to the stage, if Trump is telling the truth and follows through, that America will be the safest place for somebody like me to live and work. Imagine that. And the third of the great achievements of the last 3 days, 3 great achievements in 3 days, is the fact that he's already spoken with Zelensky. And Elon Musk was in on the call. That's intriguing. And one assumes that, true to his election promises, he told Zelensky that the game is up. Now, the concomitant knock-on effect of that is that it leaves the European political leaders up the Rhine without a paddle. They have wrecked their own economies in pursuit of an American policy, and that American policy is about to make a 180-degree turn. Imagine the German government, which collapsed the next day after Trump's election, and will now face a general election which will change things forever in the Federal Republic of Germany. Little soldier Schurz and Anna Baerbock will be mere dust in the history of Germany in just a few months' time. Between the two of them, they can scarcely muster 25% of the German people's support. Who will govern in their stead will be itself determined by a great battle. But one thing is certain. It's all happening because of Germany's determination to ruin itself in support of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Volodymyr Zelensky. The Germans have committed an act, a grave act of national self-harm, of political and economic suicide of their own country, right up to the point that they collaborated in the blowing up of their own gas pipeline to Russia. But the other European leaders are facing the same dilemma. They, politically, have gone so far out on a limb, anything for Zelensky and forever, they're now going to have to come to terms with the fact that the United States is about to withdraw its support for the war. So all their sanctions were for naught. Not as far as Russia was concerned, but very much less than naught as far as we ourselves were concerned. How do we get back from that? How do we undo all these sanctions on Russia? How do we unfreeze all of Russia's stolen assets? And will Russia be remotely interested in better relations with us when they can have the best of relations with the United States of America and cut out the middleman, cut out the satrap, the vassal that stands in between them? That leads me to the events in Amsterdam. I'm not going to really talk about Israel in this segment. I'm definitely not going to talk about football. The fact that Ajax thumped Tel Aviv Maccabi 5-0 in a European football championship is of no interest to me, except en passant to ask, how is it that Israel, a Middle Eastern country, is participating in the European football competitions? But leave that aside. What I'm going to talk about in regard to the 2 tips from Amsterdam is the gaslighting, the utter, outright falsification of news and truth that accompanied the ruckus, for that is what it was, at the Amsterdam game midweek. According to all of the Western media, according to all of the Western political leaders, in the case of Penny Wong in Australia and David Lammy in London, in exactly the same words. They tweeted, both of them, exactly the same words. For those of you who don't think there's a conspiracy going on, for those of you who don't think that these 5 eyes are all really one eye, and a partially blind one at that. For them, what happened in a football riot was a pogrom. It was the Holocaust. Again, it was Kristallnacht, whose commemoration had to be cancelled as a result of the riotous behavior of the worst football fans in the world. Don't believe me about that. Believe the Israeli press. Believe the supporters of all the other Israeli football clubs. Believe the chief of Amsterdam police, who told you in a press conference, which never made it to air, that the events in Amsterdam were entirely the responsibility of a group of Israeli fanatics, of the Likud fanatics of Maccabi, who came to Amsterdam to tear down Palestinian flags from people's homes, to sing about the fact that there were no schools in Gaza because all the children were already dead. That's what they were singing during a moment's silence for the victims of the flooding in Valencia. They carried, according to the police, planks of wood, staves of iron, and possibly knives, as they roamed around looking for citizens of the Netherlands, a super friendly European country. There is no European country led by people more fanatically pro-Israel. And they were accompanied, in their own words, by Mossad agents who went with them to supervise their safety on their trip to Amsterdam. This is in their own words. They told us in the Israeli press that Mossad agents would be accompanying them. But they sure fooled the Western political class. They sure fooled the Western media, except they didn't fool them. And this is my essential point. Every journalist who regurgitated these lies about a pogrom knew that they were lying. They had read the Daily Mail of all places, a font of truth in this desert of Western media lying. The Daily Mail reported the truth. A 14-year-old boy broadcast the truth live from the streets of Amsterdam. The King of the Netherlands, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, chancelleries all over the Western world knew that they were lying, and it reminded me of that famous Groucho Marx skit in which Groucho's wife comes into the bedroom and catches him in bed with his secretary. He sits upright and proclaims that he's doing nothing wrong and asks her, "Who are you going to believe, me or the evidence of your own eyes?" That's what it was. Anyone who wanted to could see with their own eyes what happened in Amsterdam. But the gaslighters, the industrialized liars, the militarized mendacity regiments of correspondence told you that what you were seeing with your own eyes was not what you were seeing with your own eyes. And in the last hour, France has agreed that Israeli police can come to France and police the streets of France when Maccabi come to play in the same tournament in France in a few weeks' time. Their next scheduled game was to be in Istanbul. What could possibly go wrong? Singing about dead babies in Gaza in Istanbul. What could possibly have gone wrong? So UEFA have solved that problem. They have ordered the tie to be played in a neutral country. Israel, Netanyahu, has got all of these Western leaders and their media auxiliaries to dance to their tune. And you have to ask yourself, what is it about this small country of 8 million people that has got the Western political and media class so wrapped around their finger that even when they know that you'll know that they know that they're lying, they will continue to lie? I told you, it's going to be a bumpy night. Stay tuned. This is the mother of all talk shows. Even though it has moved its mass murder campaign from Gaza, although there's still mass murdering in Gaza, of course, no day off for the poor refugees in the concentration camp of Gaza, but they have moved their killing fields to Lebanon. Lebanon, a sovereign country. Lebanon, a member of the United Nations. Lebanon, a country to which every other country in the world has diplomatic relations, has ambassadors in place, is being remorselessly bombed with hundreds and hundreds of air attacks, killing hundreds and hundreds of people every day, most of them women and children. Was it ever thus? As I said the other night, put the letter H in front of any Arab child and you can slaughter them with impunity. Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, they all look the same. They all are deserving of death, violent, sudden death, delivered from American airplanes, using American missiles and bombs, with British airplanes supplying the targeting information and the offending American and British reconnaissance flights flying out of somebody else's country, namely Cyprus, and the British sovereign base there.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, here's the poll tonight. Will Trump make America great again? Yes or no? My goodness, 32,528 of you have already voted, with quite surprising results. If you want to call the show, it is toll-free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in the United Kingdom and Ireland, 08081 965522, and the worldwide number is 0044203 966 2625. First guest is our good friend, an American in Moscow, Fiorella Isabel. We last saw her in Kazan at the BRICS just a couple of weeks ago. Independent journalist, political analyst, host of Fiorella Isabel and the Convo Couch. A big welcome to you, Fiorella. Lovely to see you again. Your takeaway first on the Trump re-election. What's your analysis of that?
Well, there's several factors. Looking at it from the American U.S. economic perspective, what you have is a retaliation of the Democratic Party, a clear focus on economics away from social issues. We're talking about what liberals have ran on, women's rights to choose and bodily autonomy and all of these things, and gay rights. Those social issues took second to what people were feeling. And being in the United States right now, actually, I'm in the US at this moment, and I have really been talking to a lot of people who are not political, just regular people. And they said that they voted for Donald Trump because they felt that the Democratic Party gaslit them and didn't really care about what they were going through and what they had to deal with. Instead, they chose to focus on the intellectual class, on the class of celebrities. And we also saw the North Carolina effect, what happened with the hurricane there. And that in itself tells you how there were billions and billions being sent to Israel and Ukraine. And I have seen more of a focus and awareness on this that I hadn't seen before in the last 8 years. I've covered elections now for the last 8 years, and I think this shift is clearly marking the fact that the Democratic Party failed to deliver. And it wasn't just about Kamala Harris. Sure, she was a terrible candidate, but there is also a sense of perhaps the fact that there is this now unveiling of sorts of what the United States is, what they're doing, and people really have just been with their head down and trying to survive. So that's one aspect of that in itself. The other aspect, I think, of it is the candidates that we had were two candidates that we have seen before in politics. Donald Trump, of course, was president before, and I did see that people had a really hard time choosing between both of them, and that overall, as your viewers have pointed out, many do not think that Donald Trump will actually make America great again.
Yeah, although there's mixed reasons for that. Many say America was never great, and so the formulation, make America great again, is faulty. But this is Trump's slogan, of course, so we went with it. But others, you're right, think that the changes that he's going to make, especially on the economy, will not succeed in making America great again. My mind is open on these questions. After all, he's not even in office yet. What I say and said in my monologue was that the three things that he's done this week, and he's only been in 3 days and isn't even in office yet, the rejection of Pompeo and Haley, the statement about freedom of speech and the internet, and the call to Zelensky and the agreement to have a phone conversation with President Putin, these are three pretty big achievements in 3 days.
Yeah, I do think that the perception that Trump is going to do something different is clear. I mean, this is what he ran on, right? This is what really put him over the top. A lot of people actually who never talked about foreign policy before brought up Ukraine, brought up Israel, asking why their tax dollars were going overseas. This I haven't seen happen at this level before. However, we have to look into the intricacies of who's behind Donald Trump. We have a lot of pro-Israel lobbyists. We have the Adelson Group. We have the Palantir PayPal mafia with J.D. Vance. We have all of this happening behind the scenes of that. So even though, I would love to be optimistic about a Trump presidency, when we're looking at the accusations against Iran of trying to assassinate Donald Trump and Trump running with it, we are seeing that shift that I talked about before. And I know we've had this conversation of moving the theater to Iran, and not just Donald Trump. I mean, this isn't just him. We know that there is a deep state. We know that there is the CIA, the intelligence apparatus, the military apparatus, and they really have a lot of weight. And when we talk about who Trump is appointing, they are still largely pro-war people surrounding him, people that want to expand on the U.S. warmongering state. And that's what I think people have to look at. Trump is really good at delivering key points, and he's really good at tailoring his message to his supporters, like he did with the garbage truck, which was genius from a PR standpoint, with working at McDonald's. All of these things are genius. But that is who Donald Trump is. You have to look beyond the salesman and see the connections that he has to the PayPal mafia, to the Palantir apparatus. And I think that is also telling of his support with Israel. Many have said that he's the most pro-Israeli president to date, and he has been before when he did want serious oil fields and push the Caesar Act and did so many things to expand the Greater Israel Project. So is he going to sway from that when his support and his billions are coming from a lot of pro-Israel lobbyists? I don't think so. I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, although almost 80% of American Jews voted for Kamala Harris, so all of his efforts didn't yield him too many votes. They definitely yielded him a lot of money from Adelson and others. But Kamala Harris raised almost 3 times as much money as Donald Trump. She outspent him 2.7 to 1. which again seems to indicate, and by the way, she's run out of money. There's a $20 million deficit in a $1 billion budget. She would appear, on the face of it, to have spent $120 in the last 10 days to no effect, if indeed she did spend it on that. So on the question of money and votes, I think that's up for grabs. But what about my point about Mike Pompeo? All of the people you were describing there were determined to get Pompeo into the government. And Trump effectively sacked Pompeo and Haley in the most humiliating way when they hadn't even applied for a job. He hadn't offered them a job, but he announced they weren't getting a job on Twitter. That's different class, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it is a good sign that he's not appointing Haley or Pompeo. I think that would have been largely unpopular. There is a percentage of his base that did vote for him in spite of his support of Israel, because they hung on the hope that he was going to not be the warmongering administration that the Biden administration was. So there is that hope. I do think he is playing his cards, but at the end of the day, I look at follow the money. And I also look at something that, I don't think a lot of people have talked about. When there was the Donald Trump presidency in 2016, the Democrats ran on that, right? And they fundraised and they got Joe Biden in. Now, then in 2020, Donald Trump claimed that the election was unfair, and many people backed him, saying, these late and mail-in ballots. And honestly, the United States elections leave a lot to be desired, to say the least, are unfair entirely at worst. And so when we're looking at that, what does a Donald Trump presidency do this time around? A Donald Trump presidency completely invalidates these election concerns, completely, in a way, does for the conservatives what it did for the liberals. It puts them to sleep. They're not going to question the government as much. And so when we look at that, we're seeing a set of events that could be unleashed. And so the pendulum has swung this way. But people have to make sure to look at not just who Donald Trump picks, but also the money connections that they have and they continue to have. Because there's one thing, as politicians know how to very well do, is present an image. And then in another, we're talking about, mass censorship, for example. Donald Trump has stated that he's going to be all about free speech. However, when you have money coming in to censor speech that is pro-Palestinian, and we have said also that he wants to deport all these pro-Palestinian people, then when we're talking about speech, that tends to be a team issue, where whichever team is against the speech goes after the other. I have yet to see a consensus, as I've seen with other politicians that are free speech absolutists, from Trump. So honestly, I do think that we'll wait and see. But for me, I'm looking at the money ties.
The jury's out, of course, as it should be all the time on all political leaders, including him. Now, we don't know what he said to Zelensky on the phone, but we have had leaks of what is supposed to be, said to be, the outline of a peace plan. But the peace plan looks to me like a complete non-starter, so much so that I'm wondering if that really is the peace plan. For example, it requires thousands of European soldiers, including a very large contingent of British Army soldiers on the demarcation line. Well, anybody who knows about Britain's relations with Russia and Russia's relations with Britain, who imagines that the Russians would allow the British Army to be stationed right next to them, is in cloud cuckoo land. The proposal that Ukraine will not be allowed to join NATO for 20 years. I mean, there's a very large number of people watching this show right now, and I include you, who will still be here in 20 years. I mean, the idea that this solves this crisis, putting it off for 20 years, during which NATO and the West build up Ukraine for a second go, there's no way in the world, is there, that Putin will agree to that when on the battlefield, Russia is carrying all before it.
Well, yeah, I absolutely agree. And I believe that Russia has already said that this is ridiculous. They have already said that there is no such thing happening. Although there could be a private and a public position, what you stated is exactly correct. Talking about putting in European, NATO, and American troops as a way to create this buffer for between Ukraine and Russia is insanity, because you're not only participating now directly in the war as they have been, right? Doing it in a sense of, oh, we're going to create some sort of peace plan. When has the United States actually done that? In every invasion, intervention, they have only worsened the crisis that existed there. And further, this is very Western American exceptionalist point of view here. When we're talking about trying to create a peace plan, we should look at what the country that has the upper hand, in this case is Russia, is asking. None of this is what Russia would agree to. Russia has been very clear from the start. They want to denazify the remaining parts of Ukraine, and now the parts that are Russian territory. They want to completely leave no room for Ukraine to ever join NATO. And they don't want the United States and Europe to be involved in their affairs. They want their national sovereignty. And so clearly, this stands in opposition as to something that Russia would agree. I mean, they've been open to a peace plan, but they will only agree to a peace plan if it essentially will coincide with their objectives. And they have spoken, the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman and Vladimir Putin have both said that they're open to working something with the new administration. However, they will still continue on their objectives, and their objectives, like I said, are very clear. And so when we look at this positioning coming from Western media, it is really done in a way that is very much keeping Russia out of the perspective. It is very much Western, US-based type of peace deal. And if that is how Donald Trump is going to come in, well, there's not going to be much difference for Russia in that part. And, Putin has stated many times that Americans change presidents, but the foreign policy will largely remain the same. And that sentiment is echoed all over West Asia as well, all over anywhere that's really outside of the Western world.
Fiorella, as always, a wonderful conversation. Thanks very much for joining us on the mother of all talk shows. Will Trump make America great again? Well, here's the numbers so far. On Telegram, only 31% say yes. On Twitter, 51% say yes. On the YouTube community poll, 37% say yes. And on the YouTube stream, 37%. Now, I am just a couple of hundred of subscribers away from 500,000 on my YouTube channel. So, last night I passed 750,000 followers on Twitter. Tonight I want to pass to 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you are watching on YouTube, or you know anyone else who is, please get them to click that button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and get me over the line of 500,000. Let me take a short break, then it's your calls all the way to the hour. Stay tuned. Let's hear from Mehdi. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, George. Thank you very much for taking my call. This is such an honor, because one thing I want to tell you is in 2003, I thought that you, I'll say it, I thought you were a prattling liberal idiot. 20 years later, I'm here honored to speak to you, to say live on air, I'm sorry, I should have listened to you back then. You're bringing the truth to what's going on out there. And one of the things is U.S. policy, whatever it is now, is our government. The problem is that it's run by people with absolutely no honor. They have no shame in what they will do to accomplish what they want. And I really think part of what's going on, that's driving what's going on in Ukraine, is that it's the possibility of all the corruption that it will uncover. that has happened there with the influence of our country and NATO since 2014.
Yeah, you spoke extremely powerfully and very graciously, and I'm grateful for it. But you put your finger on, I think, something that's been in the back of my mind for a while. I grew up in a time, indeed I sat in Parliament for almost 30 years, during a time when there were certain standards. There were double standards, of course, and there was a great deal of hypocrisy, but the ruling elite had standards that they tried to keep up. Nowadays, that facade has been torn asunder. Now they're not even pretending to be honorable gentlemen and ladies. Now they're no longer pretending that their institutions, their great departments and ministries are in anything to do with contemporary politics other than an arm of the ruling party. My last word, Mehdi, I ain't no liberal, bruv. I wasn't back in 2003, and I ain't any more liberal today.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Will Trump make America great again? Leave aside the issue of whether it's ever been great. Will he make it great? Yes or no? 34,884 of you have voted. Let's make this a very big poll indeed. The result may very well be noted. Mohammed is on the line from the Netherlands on what happened in Amsterdam. Let's hear from him. Welcome, Mohammed.
Hey, George. Welcome. Thank you for your. Thank you for having me in your show.
Welcome. Thank you, sir.
Yes, and yes, I want to talk about events in Amsterdam. You know, I'm a Moroccan too, and the Jews of the Zionist Jews who went over to Amsterdam, they attacked in the first place. They attacked the people over there, the cab drivers, the ladies on the street. They were attacking them also. If they were wearing a scarf, they were attacking them. And then the people retaliated. And then you saw what happened. And you mentioned also the little boy Bender, who were showcasing everything from the start. So, and now they say like the Moroccans are terrorists and not the Zionists who came to Amsterdam to attack the people over there.
Well, we can believe Mohammed in the Netherlands or not. We can believe the chief of police of Amsterdam or not, because she said exactly what you said. She said they attacked a taxi driver and burnt the taxi. She said they were attacking Moroccan taxi drivers. She said that they were tearing down Palestinian flags from people's houses, from their personal property. This is what the chief of police said. So given that you and the chief of police in Amsterdam are saying exactly the same thing, given that Bender filmed it in real time, 14-year-old boy with the heart of a lion, showing exactly what you just said and what the chief of police just said, how come, so far as the unlearned world, those that only believe the mainstream media, they think there was a pogrom in Amsterdam? How does that happen?
Yes, I don't understand. I don't understand, actually, I don't understand. And now the Moroccans feel like they are attacked by the mainstream media. We're not allowed to protest now. We're not allowed to enter the city center. It's just yeah. I don't understand. I can't say anything about it. No, I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand your reticence. There's a witch hunt going on. The government introduced a completely unprecedented 3-day ban on protests and are involved in the Dam Square and in some of the main shopping streets of Amsterdam this very day. Some terrible scenes. and I can understand that the Moroccans, who were responding to the most brazen levels of provocation, songs that would arouse a dead man to resist, that the schools are closed in Gaza because we've killed all the children there. Who is not going to rise up against that kind of provocation?
Indeed. And that's why the people, they defended themselves against the terrorists.
Well, thank you for calling in, Mohammed. I would like to hear from others in Amsterdam with a point of view on this. Was it a pogrom? Was it, as the King of the Netherlands said, akin to the Holocaust? Seriously? What's wrong with these people? Comments on YouTube. Scan the QR code right now. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Keep it clean, and we'll read it out on air. Ian McKillop says, you know what? I can't see Trump putting up with Netanyahu's constant insults. Or is that just me? You might be right, Ian, but then we might be wrong. Bun's dad says, I like supporting you, but it amazed me last week when a caller said APEC let Trump win, and you balked at it. Then you dismissed 15 million missing votes and did not connect those thoughts. Well, that's completely untrue. I'm the one that highlighted the 15 million missing votes. I'm the one that's been saying for the last 4 years that the 2020 election was rigged. It's not that 15 million people have gone missing. They never existed in the first place. Joe Biden didn't get 81 million votes, 15 million more than Bill Clinton, 15 million more than Barack Obama, 15 million more than Hillary Clinton. That's just a big lie. Now, you used to get put off YouTube for saying what I've just said, but no longer, because how else do you explain these missing 15 million votes? I did balk at the AIPAC letting Trump win because AIPAC were fully behind Kamala Harris. Nearly 80% of Jewish Americans voted for Kamala Harris. Most of the big money, 2.7 times more than Trump raised, came from pro-Israel business and billionaires. These are just facts. It wasn't AIPAC that made Donald Trump win, and it's a big mistake to try and persuade Donald Trump that that is what happened. I mean, think about it for a minute. Lo Ming Lum says Netanyahu has 3 conversations with Trump since his win. Kestrel says, watching the US election live, I was waiting for an avalanche of votes towards the end for Harris, but I guess they couldn't get away with it twice. And Big Basil says, has Bono driven off the cliff yet? One of the most successful clips from Wednesday's show was me talking about Bono's promise to drive off a cliff. I haven't heard any collisions or heard any news on that. If you know better, let me know. Let's go to Florida, who wouldn't, where Eve is on the line. Eve, welcome.
Thank you for having me on your show. I think you made just now the point that I wanted to make, but I have a little something to add. Kamala Harris is accused by the Democrats of having run a terrible campaign. The truth is that she was part of the government who did the debacle in Afghanistan, the debacle in Ukraine, the genocide in Gaza, the invasion on the south border, an inflation that we have never seen, and a deficit of $37,000 billion. It was impossible to do a good job, and yet she got about 69 million votes. The reason why she is attacked is exactly what you just said, is that they have to justify where are the 12 million votes missing, which never existed. And in addition to that, the part that I want to add is that you have the January 6 people who are still in jail and who are going to be freed. And if Donald Trump go after this election of 2020, then it's no longer an insurrection. They did exactly what they had to do, because to steal an election is a very big deal.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to say, is that this election of 2020 is not finished.
No, I agree. If Trump has the bottle, Yves, to pursue it, he might not. He might trade it in his transactional way. But if he has the bottle to pursue 2020, there'll be a very large number of people going to prison, and it won't be the people who are in prison for January 6th. It will be the people who rigged the election in 2020. And they're some pretty big people indeed. Last word to you, Yves.
Well, yes, I think you are correct. And I wanted to ask one thing about the election, is that the reason why the left was so afraid is, number one, for what we just said, and number two is that Trump is only a 4-year president now. So the people who are serving him will want to be on a good footing when he's out in 2028, and so the Democrat may be out of power for a long, long time.
I agree. Potential successors to Donald Trump are not that hard to identify, even at this early stage. Thanks very much, Yves, for that call. Now, big news on the podcast again this week. We're in the top 5 in Albania. Who knew? In Macedonia, in Oman, in Saudi Arabia, and in Greece. On top of being number 1 in Lebanon again. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code in the corner of the screen right now. You can also listen to it on our website, moats.tv. On line 1 is Kevin in Suffolk in England on Trump and Starmer. A very intriguing seam that. Kevin, what do you want to say about it?
Well, first of all, that was a very interesting call from the gentleman in Florida.
Yes.
I think for people that are expressing concerns, I stayed up. I'm a political junkie, and I stayed up till, 5 a.m. because I was convinced they were going to pull something again. I don't know. I'm trying not to overstate this, but there was a sense afterwards of like such an oppression lifting. And for everyone who's like got, whatever concerns you've got, just think where we would be if Kamala had won, because I just do not know. I think the West would be finished. Seriously. I just seriously think the West would be finished. What I kind of called up to say was, apparently, and I don't know if this story is correct, but there was something in The Guardian, I read this through X, that I've lost my train of thought, sorry.
It's okay, don't worry. Your first point was a powerful enough one in any case, Kevin. If you haven't recovered your thoughts, I'll move on to the poll. Will Trump make America great again, yes or no? Get your vote in. You've got about 40 minutes to do so, yes or no. On Telegram, t.me/George Galloway. On X, on my Twitter handle, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. And please, please, please get me over 500,000 live on this show this evening. Who will be my 500,000th subscriber on YouTube? KB says, what does Israel have on the Western and Arab leaders that they can exert so much power over them? Militarily, Israel is weak, and this is a known fact now. Jamila Asfu says, no to NATO, no to war. I refuse that evil and criminal organization because they destroyed my country. Thank you, great George. Thank you, Jamila. politically offensive, says Ukraine will be divided for sure, will never join the EU or NATO. Russia was tricked once with Gorbachev, never, ever again. I mean, to that, coming up after this short break, is the one and only Niko House with his inimitable take on all matters Americana. Don't miss it. Short break. Be right back.
You know, and it's a very, thank you for, you know, I'm a big fan of your show, Gigi. Great debate, great. And I'm Scottish. I'm very passionate about what's happening there, you know. I had a great mom. She was Scottish, Mary McLeod. She taught me well. She taught me well at everything, including golf. I love Scotland, and I love the Scottish food. It's great food. I said to Melania, you know, haggis. Look at that. What's more Scottish than that? Me. I am that haggis. She said, what, thin-skinned and full of crap?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
We are the only show where Donald Trump actually made a commercial for us. Will Trump make America great again? Yes or no? Get your votes in now in the next 40 minutes. Let's try and get that up over 40,000 votes cast. Then it's a significant taster of people's views. And at the moment, a clear majority of people do not think that Donald Trump will make America great again. Let's see what Niko House thinks, political commentator, founder of MCSC Network. Niko, welcome back. Your take first on the election. Why did Kamala Harris lose?
Oh, man, there are a whole host of reasons. I think they can be boiled down to the genocide in the economy and really how those two issues are kind of intertwined, right? We can all, I think everybody in the West has some idea that the actions being taken by the United States and NATO abroad are causing problems within the economy back at home. They may not be able to articulate the intricacies of that, but they know it's true. And then there's just the reality of the genocide itself. George, I don't know if you recall, but I said some time ago on this show, no Democrat since Bill Clinton, and that was only one time, no Democrat has won the United States election without Michigan. And yet time and time again, we saw Kamala stumble and trip in Michigan. All the way into that final statement that she made where she said, if you want Trump to win, just say so, otherwise I'm talking. She said that in Detroit, Michigan. And so the Arab voters and the Muslim voters of Dearborn all came out and said, okay, cool, we don't want to make you a liar, so we'll literally vote for Trump to stop you from winning. And that was a tale of the tape as far as the election is concerned. I do echo the sentiments, however, of your last caller, where he said, who knows where we would be at if the Democrats would have won. And I believe that's the case for a whole host of reasons, because don't believe for a second that they didn't try to cheat. I don't believe that. I just believe that sometimes you could try to cheat and you still lose. And I believe that they're not unified. And that's why Kamala wasn't able to come away with the victory this time.
Yeah, and there are some weird things happening, aren't there? We're asked to believe that some states voted heavily for Trump, but then voted for a woke Democrat for senator on the same election night. It may be that the cheating moved down the ticket, as it were. What's your view on that?
That's a possibility. Or there's also situations where in Missouri, for example, where Josh Hawley maintained his seat, Missouri legalized marijuana. They got rid of their pro-abortion ban. They raised the minimum wage to $15 per hour. So a bunch of progressive policies passed in a state that is deeply red. And so it could just be, it's not that people don't like progressive policies. It isn't that they didn't just like Kamala. It isn't that they're sexist. It isn't that they're racist. It's just that they don't like them. They don't like Democrats. They're done with them. They're done with the gaslighting. And then there's the point that a lot of people have made that I, of course, echo as well. Where the hell did those 20 million votes come from last election, and where did they go? And why were so many of them first-time voters and all of a sudden they disappeared? this election. I would like to believe it's the genocide that caused the disappearance of those votes, but I don't believe that. And during the pandemic, there were a lot of unique ways that you could have voted that didn't really have accountability or a chain of custody that couldn't be done this election. And I just find it weird that those votes appeared last election whenever the voting system was most vulnerable. And now they disappeared this election and Trump won by a landslide with both the electoral and the popular vote.
Yeah, there's only two possibilities about the missing votes. One is that they stayed home because Donald Trump got the same vote this time that he got in 2020. So they didn't go to Trump. He turned in the same vote both times. And they didn't go to anybody else. It's not that they went third party. So they either stayed home or they didn't exist in the first place. And I'm leaning heavily towards the latter. What about you?
No, 100%. There is no way that anyone can believe our election system is legitimate. George, in Ohio, JillStein was moved at the last minute because they said that she didn't file, they lied at the end. They said it's because she put in a notice to withdraw. That wasn't true. What happened was they said that she declared her vice presidential candidate too late because the deadline was August 12th. She didn't declare it till August 19th. George, the Democrats didn't have a presidential or a VP nominee until August 17th, 2 days before. But this rule did not apply to them, but it applied to JillStein. Georgia took Cornel West off of the ballot. New York changed the rules at the last minute to keep Cornel West and JillStein off the ballot. So it isn't even like the Green Party or third parties didn't get any momentum this time. It was just that once again, the Democratic Party was able to successfully undercut their momentum through anti-democratic methods. And so it's important that we understand we don't live in a democracy, representative or otherwise, and that's the problem. That's how we keep ending up at this fork in the road with Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton and a Donald Trump. Those shouldn't be our only options, yet because our democratic process is so undemocratic, those end up being our options. And you can't tell me the voting system itself is somehow an exception to that rule.
Now, they're looking for people to blame. They're blaming black men. They're blaming Latino men. They're blaming white women. They're blaming Kamala Harris. They're blaming George Clooney. Nancy Pelosi is blaming Joe Biden. How is all that going to end up?
I gotta admit, I was kind of surprised that Susan Sarandon's name didn't come up on the news this time around. We're so used to hearing Susan Sarandon's name that it was funny that she's the only one who wasn't blamed this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel bad for my Latino brothers out there because they acted like y'all didn't even exist before the election. That like the demographic was non-existent, and then all of a sudden it went from y'all don't exist to it's all y'all fault. So I feel for y'all. Welcome to the club. Black men have been getting blamed for elections losses for a very long time. So glad that you get to make it to the party. At the end of the day, what it looks like is that the Democratic Party wants to do everything except for address the needs of the people. If you acknowledge the problem, George, you did have the responsibility to address and fix that problem. The problem is the economy. The problem is that they gaslighted people for a long time, not just the last 4 years, but really for the last 8 years and probably a little bit longer than that. The problem is that they could have brought charges against Donald Trump for legitimate reasons regarding war crimes. They chose not to. They charged Trump up false charges, weaponized the government against him, and then act like they're afraid he's going to do the same thing to them that they did to him. They don't want to address the working class issues. They don't want to address inflation. They don't want to address increased interest rates. They don't want to address the fact that they got caught lying about unemployment. If you acknowledge the reality of the working class voter, if you acknowledge the genocide, if you acknowledge how AIPAC had a huge influence in a way that they weren't expecting, and I mean that AIPAC caused the Democrats the election. They didn't win it for them. If you acknowledge all that, then you have to fix it. Because if you don't, then you're just really going to you're really just throwing the middle finger up to the working class, and it's obvious. So they're going to blame everything but the truth. But because if they acknowledge the truth, then they have to fix it and address it, and they are not willing to do that right now.
What is going to happen now? He's got 70 days left, Joe Biden. I don't know if he knows that. None of us know whether or not he knows anything at all. But it's a dangerous period, isn't it? He's already, as administration is, trying to kick over more billions into a war which the next president, who takes over on January 20th, has already said must stop. And yet more American taxpayers' money is going to be poured into the maw of that. But other dangerous things could happen in the Persian Gulf, in the Levant, in the Israel-Palestine, Israel-Lebanon, Israel-Syria, where remarkable bombing attacks were made in Damascus this very afternoon. This Biden administration ain't done killing yet, is it?
No, and I got to tell you, you want to talk about, missing the point, right? You just lost an election because you kept taking money from the American people and allocating it in places that not only don't help the American people, but are actively hurting the economy in which the American people live in. And so to respond to that, you send $6 billion more to neo-Nazis in a losing war effort. Just because you don't want Trump to be able to stop that, the aid once he gets in power, and you're bypassing Congress to do it, and the Democrats aren't even saying anything about it. And let it be known, the Republicans don't seem to be saying much about it either. So it's just, they hate the working class people. That's the only way I can think of to put it at this point, George. It's like they hate the working class people. And you're right, because now Joe Biden, and I guess more importantly, the people who are actually running his administration, because we know at this point, it ain't Joe Biden running it. The people that are running Joe Biden's administration know, well, we don't got no consequences for the next 70 days. So let's go ahead and ramp it up to such a degree that Trump will be put in a compromised situation the moment he gets in office, and anything positive that he at least attempts to do will be undercut by the actions of the Democratic Party before he gets out, and by the war machine before he gets out. Because don't get it twisted. I know that Trump is a part of the war machine in a lot of ways, but once again, it's his unpredictability that causes discombobulation, which often exposes a system and puts the system in a compromised position as far as the perspective of the rest of the world and how they view some of these actions, right? Like people are gonna talk about some of the stuff that's going on overseas a lot more now. Why? Because Trump is in office. So we'll see how he reacts to that. But I do believe that the Democrats believe that they are in a almost like a free period, like a free zone where they can get away with anything they want, because now they don't have to worry about electoral consequences, since everything is over. The Republicans have the governorships, they have the Senate, they have the House, they have the White House, and they have the Supreme Court. So it's like, what could go wrong for us?
Now, finally, Niko, we're going to mark Donald Trump's report card every week. Don't get me wrong on that. I see from our poll this evening, which is a very big one, that most people do not think that Trump is going to make America great again. A very clear majority on that. Our previous guest, Fiorella, Isabel, was deeply skeptical as to what the Trump administration will be like. I'll admit I'm slightly more optimistic than that. But if I was marking his report card this week, I'd say he's done really very well. In just 3 days, he's declared for freedom of speech, the sacred nature of the First Amendment, the unacceptability of big tech dictatorship, the unacceptability of state-directed big tech dictatorship. He's called Zelensky and told them that the game is up, and he's booted Pompeo's formerly fat ass right out of the cabinet before he even got in it. That's not bad in 3 days.
A little bit worried, I'm not going to lie. We all thought that Pompeo was the first in line. Ben Shapiro's reporting that. Even whenever Trump invited Pompeo to speak at his rally, we thought that. But you're right. It looks like he might, once again, we've had this conversation before, he might be responding to his audience. He might be responding to his base, because whenever his base found out Pompeo might be back in the door, they responded accordingly. So this is one of the things about Trump. He don't love nothing more than his ego. And for his ego to be satisfied, his base has to love him. And that can sometimes yield good results for us. Am I hopeful that he'll make America great? No, not necessarily. However, you can't get worse than genocide in World War III, George. It isn't that hard to be better than Joe Biden. That's my point. You know what I'm saying? It's not that difficult.
My point too, exactly. Niko House, you're a star. Thanks for joining us. on the mother of all talk shows. Will Trump make America great again, yes or no? You've got half an hour left to vote. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls right up to Gayatri's social media roundup. Stay tuned.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement. A big thank you to all our wonderful listeners, as the Mother of All Talk Shows podcast is now one of the most listened to political podcasts in the entire world. We are the #1 English-speaking political podcast in the Middle East, and in the last year alone have charted in the top 10 in podcast land in Pakistan, Russia, and China. Like, rate, and subscribe to the MOATS podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to be a part of the fastest rising independent news show in the world.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Okay, a subscribers update. The analytics as of 8:15 say that we currently have 499,679 new subscribers in total. The new subscribers in the last 28 days are 15,559. So just 321 subscribers to go. Subscribe on YouTube now. Be the 500,000th subscriber on our YouTube channel. I dare you. We've got Appa, the rapper from Amsterdam, a surprise late addition to tonight's billing, and he, who's performed with Low Key, by the way, is a very, very prominent and terrific performer. We'll get his take on events in Amsterdam before the end of the show. Stephanie is in Connecticut and has a point of view on Donald Trump. Let's hear from her. Stephanie, welcome.
Hi, George. Thank you so much for taking my call. I'm a first-time caller, so I'm a little nervous. But I want to talk about the kind of inspiration that Trump, if he wanted to, could draw from Franklin Roosevelt. I didn't vote for Trump. I'm a Stein supporter, but I accept that he is our president, and I think we all need to help him do the best that he can for all of us. Yesterday, I took a trip to the FDR Library Museum in upstate New York, and I was inspired by all the bold steps that FDR took to bring America back from the brink of ruin. And I couldn't help wishing, while I was going through the library, that Trump, who is a fellow New Yorker of FDR's, would visit the library himself and take inspiration for his own presidency. I know that it's true that Republicans are not fans of FDR, but FDR himself was a big fan of his Republican uncle, Teddy Roosevelt, and emulated him. So I think things could come around full circle now. The first time that Trump was in office, I was out protesting all sorts of things, and this time I decided I don't want to protest. I think we all need to join together and think of ourselves as allies of the president. He is president for all of us, to help him make the right decisions and help him move our country to a better place. I don't think he's another FDR, but I think if he would take inspiration from FDR, and if he wants to be remembered with the kind of admiration and reverence with which FDR is remembered, then I think it would be wonderful for him to take some of his blueprints from FDR.
That's a very beautiful call. I hope he hears it. I know that people close to him watch the show, and I hope that they report it to them. It's exactly the right spirit that people should adopt, in my view. It's what I'm trying to do on this show tonight. I was a JillStein supporter too, but Trump won. He won so comprehensively as to end any and all possibility of rigging and stealing the election. And we must wish him well. And when he does well, we must say so. And when he does badly, we should criticize him. That's what you should do for any political leader. There is absolutely no case for blind obedience or blind following a political leader. They might lead you off the cliff. And this kind of foolish, fake tribalism of Democrat versus Republican, when both parties stand for exactly the same things, that put us in this mess in the first place. I'll go further. I don't believe that Donald Trump actually is a Republican. He has nothing in common with the Republicans that went before him, and the Republicans that went before him almost all weighed in against him in the election in 2020 and again this last week. He is a national populist leader. If he governs as a national populist leader, he'll do very well. America has great assets, great attributes, a huge continental mass from sea to shining sea, a huge population, a tremendous market which very largely shops and holidays locally and so on. America could be great. I don't say again, but America could be great. But it would need someone governing the country in the interests of the country rather than in the interests of others who have themselves an interest in the exploitation of others abroad. I hope he does it. If he doesn't, I'll be his biggest critic. But if he does, I'm not going to allow people mindlessly to criticize him because he's rude and vulgar. That would be ridiculous. Thanks, Stephanie, for that great call. Rollo Tomasi, I think it says, Israel operates with fait accompli tactics. Gaza is destroyed. Trump can proclaim a deal and act as if he is stopping war. And wake up, US, says Harris lost because of foundational black Americans, particularly the male vote. It wasn't because of race. Harris is not black. And it wasn't because of gender. It was because of negligence. And Antonio Cristoforo says Kamala Harris will win in 4 years' time if she puts her money on the Republican candidate. Very good. GES sends a $9.99 donation. Thank you very much for that. Trump is too much of a capitalist to make America great again. Long history of fighting labor unions and never the thoughts of worker representation on corporation boards. Trump won't change that. And Lunan Desole 1 sends a $49.99 donation. Thanks for your program, George. You helped me and still help me to get through these strange and painful times. I believe that Trump will keep his mandate. He has much to lose if he doesn't. Thank you indeed for your kind words and your donation. Sean is in Washington, D.C. with a view on why Kamala lost. Let's hear from her. Sean, go ahead.
Hopefully you can hear from me. Congratulations to you and your wife. I hope I don't mispronounce the name, Gertrude, for going against Sky News and what we call being quick on the stick and getting that video.
She was brilliant.
Yes, and getting that video when you were there at BRICS, and we love that you're there representing. I'm not the UK, I'm the United States, but I'm with you and your wife. Let's keep the heat on.
Thank you.
I am a U.S. freedman. I am a freedman, legal status, a descendant of U.S. chattel slavery. You guys call me a black woman. Let me tell you why she lost. First of all, there was no primary. That was mistake number one. If you are a democracy, you need to demonstrate it. You don't get to handpick a candidate. They should have reran. If anybody had any kind of enthusiasm to run, they should have given them the stage, include independents. JillStein. What the world needs to know, the Democratic Party is blocking out voices. Not only do they block out third-party candidates, but they literally blocked out the primary candidates. There were no primaries.
Well, three times in a row. 3 times in a row, yeah. Sean. They rigged the primary against Sanders. Then they rigged it against Sanders again. Then they rigged it for Biden. and then they abolished it for Kamala. So 4 times they've done it now.
Yes, and what I want the world, because you're international, because I am what you call a black woman, we are beginning to be more sophisticated. So we understand that they are going to be crushed. And that's why they were crushed and slaughtered in this, because we are waking up. The next thing, the reason why she didn't want to, the next reason why she lost, she did not want to break away from war. If you are going to be, I'm going to, I sympathize, it's a ceasefire, it's this. Okay, you are in power. So you can break away and you can stop these wars immediately because you are literally sitting in a position of power. And then you're going to tell me, like I'm some sort of arse, that you're going to do it once you get elected when you already have the power to do it now. Okay, the second thing, no control of the borders. That's really big in America right now. We love immigrants, but we don't like an out-of-control border. You were tasked from the onset as VP as a border czar, and you have czarred nothing. You've done absolutely nothing. These are the reasons why you're losing. And then you're going to give, and this is a problem, you're going to give insult to us. If people are wondering, what is the black people thinking? Then you're gonna go and do all these things under the pretense that you're black when you're not even black. And this is what we have a problem with the Democratic Party. What they do is they use our trauma, our history, our slavery, Jim Crow, listing to advance issues that have nothing to do with us. All of these gender reassignments, all of this stuff, you don't know. This is not us. These are the powers that control. They put a black face on everything that's bad. So that's the political part of it.
Well, I'll tell you what, Sean. I'll be very lucky if I get a better call than that this evening or any evening. Please come back. Don't be a stranger. Sean in Washington, D.C. on why Kamala lost. Absolutely priceless. Let's go to Swindon in England and talk with David about Amsterdam. It is the global university of the airwaves, after all. David, what have you got to say?
Yeah, on the Amsterdam thing, you've taken my thunder already, as you usually do. I'd called you at 8 o'clock. I saw all the reports. I've seen the videos and the chants in the stands, etc. And I totally agree. Oh, yeah, and Sky News evidently pulled that report and those videos. The actual commentator called it Kristallnacht. Wow. So, which was a bit of a shock. But anyway, the thing I'd like your views on is I believe Ukraine will reduce the funding there. He'll try and cool down the Israel. But I think he's only doing it to focus on his favourite subject, which is China. He loves China, and he wants Taiwan. That's his big next focus, I believe. In 6 months' time, he'll be on his China-Taiwan focus.
Well, we'll see. Reportedly, he got on famously with Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader. I can see where you're coming from. I know why you're saying what you say, but I'm going to wait until we see it. I'm going to wait until the evidence. And if the evidence mounts up, if the facts change, so will my opinions. But my current opinion is that he doesn't want to go to war with anybody. That's my current opinion. If the facts change, I'll change that opinion. And we'll mark his card every single week. But excellent. David, on the Amsterdam issue, Sky edited the edit of the edit. Sky put out the standard "it's a pogrom" line. Then, after a huge uproar and seeing all the evidence, Sky put out an exemplary report which told the truth. And then the next day they deleted it and said that the previous report had not met Sky's standards of impartiality. So I took a look at the Sky News political editor just to see, her record of impartiality on this subject. I discover that she is a columnist in the Jewish Chronicle, a columnist in the Jewish News, and that her social media profiles are a midden, as we say in Scotland, a garbage heap of rabid pro-Israel propaganda, a supporter of the Israeli military, a person who attends events in support of the Israeli military. She's in charge of Sky News's standards of impartiality, and she still hasn't deleted, in this controversy, any of the rabid Zionist, pro-Israel, pro-Netanyahu propaganda. She's so arrogant, she knows she doesn't have to. She doesn't have to pretend to be impartial in order to axe a perfectly truthful report by one of her own colleagues, one of her own staff, David in Swindon.
Okay.
Thanks for that. As I say, we've got Appa, the Dutch rapper, coming up in the next few minutes. He's there now. Great. Appa, welcome.
Thank you so much.
We're having a good going up and downer here on the Western media, the Western political class, including your own king, who must know that they were lying when they described this as some kind of pogrom, when they described this, as the Dutch king did, as akin to what happened in the Netherlands in the Holocaust. Leaving aside why they do this, the scale of it is unprecedented. The gaslighting has never been more obvious. And therefore, I think it's an own goal for the Israel lobby, to coin a footballing phrase. What's your view?
I think they're losing their grip. I think a lot of people in the Netherlands are starting to wake up to the sad and tragic reality on the ground. I think a lot of people are seeing the grip that the Zionist lobby have on Dutch politics inside the Dutch media, the mainstream media. The way that they lobby and that they play their cards is very foul. It's a dangerous tactic. It puts people against each other. I think a lot of people are starting to wake up and smelling the coffee, and now they're trying to maintain that image by keeping the lies alive, I guess.
They've overplayed their hand, is I suppose the point I'm making, because unlike in previous times, they're unable to control the narrative. I mean, exactly. It's true that the sheep who just follow the sheepdog, they think there was a pogrom in the Netherlands, and they blame Moroccans for it, whom they call Arabs, though almost all of them are in fact Berbers, not Arabs. Most of these sheep think that. But more people know the truth about this incident than ever was possible in the past. Thanks to that little 14-year-old boy who actually stood his ground and filmed it all. Thanks to the testimony of the Jews in Amsterdam who put the blame fairly and squarely on the Zionist fanatics that had run rampage through your city. Thanks to all the citizens, of whom you're one, who are not afraid to tell the truth. I think it's been an own goal.
It's crazy to see that regular people have to stand up against far-right extremist hooligans in the first place, and regular people have to stand up against lying media companies, lying journalists. Everybody's twisting the truth on all the major platforms, including our politicians. It's crazy that the regular people have to do this. It's good that they do. It's very important that it happens, but it's crazy that we can't even have a normal debate on Instagram, for instance, because they took down my Instagram account for a couple of days. I'm lucky to have a couple of friends that can call some people and get it back, but This is what they're doing right now. At this moment in Amsterdam, in Holland, in the Netherlands, they're taking down every channel, everybody who has a good portion of influence to counter these lies. They're taking them down. A couple of months ago, they kicked in my door, took me to jail because I was talking about the situation in Gaza. And my influence was getting bigger and bigger, so they thought maybe they can scare me when they kick in my door, take me to jail. Maybe I will shut my mouth. They made a grave mistake with that because it only empowers us even more because we're fighting for the truth. But this is how the Dutch government is going to work right now. This is what they're doing, and it's a crazy time we're living in, George. It's a crazy time.
It was particularly crazy that it all happened in the Netherlands. There is no country in Europe more slavishly in support of Israel than the current regime in the Netherlands. The biggest political figure in the Netherlands, who paradoxically, or perhaps not, is regarded by most people as a proto-fascist, Geert Wilders, is at the same time Israel's biggest supporter. Your Prime Minister...
He also went on a couple of trips to Israel in the beginning of his political career. He went on a couple of trips. They showed him, of course, all the propaganda that he has to go and spew out here in the Netherlands. He's been a loyal friend to the Zionist lobbyists in Holland. Every chance he gets to spew all these lies, he does it. All these stereotypes and trying to divide the people. He does it all the time. So his loyalty is not to the Netherlands, it's not to the Dutch people, it's to Israel and its allies.
Because of the paradox that they chose the most pro-Israel country in Europe to create this massive provocation, to blacken the name of the Netherlands across the world. I'm wondering if it was a deliberate choice, if they intend now exporting the war, if they intend trying to cause civil disorder in European countries, to divide European countries one against the other. Or am I reading too much into it?
No, I think it's a fair judgment. I think it's a real fair judgment because, like I said before, they're losing this war. People are waking up. So the only tactic they have left is divide and conquer. If they cannot divide the people and put their attention on their own safety, it's going to be a problem because they're going to lose the war also in the Netherlands because a lot of Dutch people are waking up. Every day, people are waking up. And people are getting sick and tired of this nonsense, of these lies, being lied to like they're just a couple of sheep that don't matter, they don't have any worth. So people are starting to wake up and criticizing this grip that this lobby has on this country. And a lot of Dutch people are getting fed up with this. Of course, the migrant groups are screaming for decades now about these Zionist lobbyists who are controlling our media, controlling the narrative, and playing this disgusting card that they have. But I think that this is the only way they can go forward in Europe. They have to divide the people. They have to create chaos. They have to create a lot of animosity so they can control within that chaos. And they can play the people against each other. They have to do it like this. I think this is the only strategy that they have left because they're losing the war big time. They're losing on the ground in Lebanon, in Gaza. They're losing on the ground. And in the media, they still have their grip. The strength that they have is the only thing that they have left because on the ground, in the reality, it's done. They're getting a good hiding.
Appa, we now know you're currently, presently, hopefully temporarily off Instagram. Where can people follow your work?
Well, actually, I got my Instagram account back today.
Okay,
thank
good.
God, I got it back today. So we're back in action and we're still fighting. So I'm glad we're back. I'm glad our friends got it back for me. And this is what we have to do. We have to keep fighting. As long as we have our tools at hand, we're going to fight with these tools. If we don't have them anymore, we have to be creative and find alternative ways to keep on fighting for the right cause. And one day it's going to be better, inshallah.
Amin. Thank you very much indeed. Appa, the Dutch rapper in Amsterdam, spitting truth on the events of this week. Rafael Duca says all Moroccans in the Netherlands should be given automatic citizenship. They put the Netherlands high on the podium of anti-genocide fighters. And Danai says those Israeli hooligans did similar things, attacked Arab migrants in Athens in 2016. And Dan Fortunato says, step aside, GB, your soccer hooligans have been replaced by a new champion, an apartheid state with soccer teams that could not even be competitive in the cellar of the English Football League system. Let me go to a legend, Simon of Weaponized News, with an update from the United States. Simon, welcome.
Greetings to you, Mr. Galloway, and to your worldwide audience once again. Well, I think, first of all, we should note that tomorrow is the 20th anniversary of the death of Yasser Arafat. And I'm sure you would have mentioned that in your closing remarks, so forgive me if I jumped the gun there. But the other event that is going to be happening tomorrow is the second, and unfortunately a second one is necessary, joint Arab and Organization of Islamic Countries conference in Saudi Arabia to together, all 55 or so of them, countries address the issue now not only of Palestine, but also of Lebanon. And clearly it's tragic that a year on, they've proved themselves to be rather largely ineffective since they formed that joint committee, including your good friend, the lady foreign minister from the country of Indonesia, who, whilst meeting with many of the great and the good, unfortunately haven't managed to form quite a unified front to sanction the Zionists. But it's rather sad that the main item on the agenda is to issue a unified condemnatory statement. One would have thought a year in that we're somewhat beyond that point. But whilst we've been seeing the media spin their lies in much the same way, as you and I have previously discussed about the order of attack during some of the worst scenes in the miners' strikes that the BBC only admitted 10 years in arrears. And of course, many of your British listeners will recall the Hillsborough tragedy, where they tried to blame the victims for the cause of that terrible occurrence. It is very, very beneficial that obviously you have a wonderful show and that young man and many others in Holland have been trying to show the truth. I think it's a great wake-up call to see that Sky News put out a true account of 5 minutes, which many people were able to download, and then re-edited it apparently on instructions from above in order to fit in with the global victimhood narrative that was being spread about issues like pogroms and a recreation of Kristallnacht. So I'm very grateful for you, sir, and for your crew for bringing the audience's attention to what clearly is gross misinformation. And that obviously ties in with the very, very bold statement that we've had from President-elect Trump here in America, where he's given this 6-minute and 14-second speech on X, where he's described how he wants to impose 5-year penalties on tech leaders who allow their media deliberately, not just hosting it with other people's comments, to put out a false narrative, and stated how he's going to hold accountable and fire thousands of American civil servants who have been conniving with various or other organizations in order to suppress free speech in America for the last 4 years. And we can think of things like the Stanford Internet Observatory and also the State Department Global Engagement Center and many, many others. But he does seem to be taking quite a risk by showing his cards 70 days before taking the reins of power, if such thing even does occur. And whilst I appreciate that his, and I'm sure you do, that his campaign is undoubtedly infiltrated to some extent by various deep staters, it is, I guess, a flip of a coin whether you're going to show your hand in advance and take the consequences, or whether or not they know what conversations you're having already, and so they already know what you're intending, and you might as well get it out in the public.
Very good point. A very, very good point. He has declared war on big tech censorship and on government collusion with big tech in the interests of censorship. That's a pretty significant thing. Simon, thanks. Sorry for hurrying you because of the hour. I've got Susie in England, in Dunstable, up next. Go ahead, Susie.
Oh, hello, George. Thank you for taking my call. Just got 2 points. One is a comment and one is a question. So following on from the Democrats saying that Donald Trump is like Hitler, I've recently been rewatching World at War, and in the second or third episode, Hitler is giving a speech and uses the word fight. So Kamala is actually copying Hitler, taking words from his mouth. So I just thought I'd make that as a comment. And then my question to you is, in the last few months of power, what do you think that Joe, or the people who are pulling his strings, what do you think that Joe would or could do to wreck America even more, to make Donald Trump's starting point even lower, therefore making it harder for him to make things better?
Yeah, it's a real danger, and I raised it with Niko House earlier and indirectly with Fiorella in the first interview. He has presidential powers on issues of foreign policy more than on any other thing. So he can't, for example, wipe out the student debt. He could try it, but it would be blocked and the courts would get involved and it would never happen in time. But he could launch a rocket that would hit a target just with the push of a button, just with the order to the top brass. And that's what worries me. I don't believe that he's going to do that in Ukraine. He's sent another $6 billion to Zelensky, which is grand larceny when your opponent, who intends to stop the money, has just been so comprehensively elected. So the place I'm worried about most is the Persian Gulf. It might be that Trump wants to go out with a big bang, and he wouldn't be the only one going out with it. That's the problem. Susie in Dunstable, thanks for that call. Now look, I'm just 245 subscribers to go to get to the 500,000, so you still have a chance of being my 500,000th subscriber, and we'll showcase you on Wednesday if you are that person. So if you have not yet subscribed, 245 of you, go now. Now I have another show, as well as 2 mother of all talk shows. I've got Have It Out with Galloway. Here's how you can participate in it. Watch this. Join me every week to Have It Out with Galloway. We discuss the great issues of the day and occasionally the odd philosophical meandering through the meaning of life. You can be on the show by contacting us at our website, haveitoutwithgalloway.com. You can be the star of the show. Join me on Have It Out with Galloway. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Which means I've got my good wife right next to me, which is where I like her to be. Gayatri, what's rattling?
Well, will Trump make America great again? The audience is surprisingly pessimistic,
Yeah, they
or
are very...
perhaps realistic.
They are.
Or maybe we are still in our honeymoon period, rejoicing over the Democrats and their accolades being crushed comprehensively. So Maza says, watching Harris voters cry made it great for me. Does that count?
Well,
yes.
It made it great for me too. As I said on Wednesday, the worst people in the world were crying. What's not to love?
Others were rather more skeptic. Gordon Stiles says, did King Canute turn back the tide? And Terry Williams says, America is a declining empire with a crumbling dollar. Its egoistical leaders want the dollar to remain on top, but BRICS will topple it, and the US billionaires will refuse to join the party. It will be the sorry states of America. And Peter Solem says, a more important question is, will Trump be able to reindustrialize the Rust Belt, or will this be blocked by Wall Street neoliberals?
Yeah, if I were him, that's what I'd do. I mean, he's talking about tariffs.
Yeah.
If I were him, I'd be imposing tariffs, although British industry is in some fear of tariffs. On the other hand, he might conclude the long-delayed trade agreement between the US and the UK, which would mitigate the tariffs issue, of course. But, I mean, if I were the United States president with the internal market that they have, I'd be saying only in the most exceptional circumstances do we want your foreign imports.
Exactly.
We'll build and can build our own.
Exactly. Charles Morgan says, going into a job facing a debt burden like no other in history, he can either go full austerity or he can be known for misery like the one when the Soviet Union collapsed. Or he can party with even more borrowed money, causing an even harder collapse in a few years. And Jai says, I doubt it, but I hope he does. Some of the things he said he's going to do are quite promising, like about Ukraine, releasing CIA files regarding Epstein, and a few other things. I'm hoping, but I'm not holding my breath. An early indicator will be if he gives Pompeo the job or not. Well, obviously, Jay replied prior to the great news.
Great news that Pompeo's bubble is burst.
No Pompeo, no Nikki Haley.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
That doesn't mean there are not creatures of the deep still, serpenting around. But the big two that had a big push and a big shout to be on the cabinet table, they've been sacked.
Well, we just saw on Donald Trump Jr.'s Instagram a story he shared showing a picture of Zelensky with the text, point of view, losing your allowance in 38 days. There you go.
That is very significant.
Yeah.
That is very significant.
So, yeah.
Donald Trump Jr., we watched him in the middle of the night.
We did.
He was very impressive. I'd never seen him speak before. I knew there was a Donald Trump Jr., but I'd never seen him speak. He was on with Tucker Carlson.
He was.
He spoke at some length. You could see that Donald Trump was his father, but he was extremely slick and articulate. And as you've just seen on that screenshot, pretty radical, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's kind of the age, you've got to be 35 to be president of the US. He's definitely going to be well over 35 by the time of the next election. He's got name recognition.
He does.
You don't even have to print new posters. You just run
keep Trump,
Vance, and there you've saved yourself a bit of money. You can thank me later for that advice.
Vance has been saying interesting things too, hasn't he? Very
He's
very
a very
groundbreaking.
interesting guy, yeah.
I
was one of the first to identify that.
He's the one who wrote about the hillbillies,
He wrote
didn't
the Hillbilly Elegy, which was a tremendous elegy to a different side of America. A simpler, rustic, rural, hillbilly life that was quite a significant part of the building of the USA. And I thought he's a very prominent Roman Catholic. He does have dodgy funders, but most American politicians have got dodgy funders. But he's extremely blunt. And maybe being extremely blunt is the way forward. for political leaders. I'm going to try it anyway.
Well, he's got quite a few extremely blunt characters lining up.
Well, Colonel McGregor, you mean?
Colonel McGregor.
If Colonel McGregor were to get the defence job, Tulsi Gabbard, the Secretary of State, I mean,
Candace Owens, not to forget.
Sorry?
Candace Owens, in the press secretary.
Candace Owens as the press secretary would be a masterstroke, don't you think?
Oh, people know I'm a big fan of her, even before she was big and controversial, because she has proven to be steadfast.
Totally.
Before and after October 7th.
On the Palestine question, she's been outstanding.
Exactly. So let's dive back to the UK, where someone asked, hi both, just wanted to ask your views since the European project seems to be sinking quick and Starmer has blown it with Trump. Is karma going to hit Starmer like a train, resulting in his government failing through their lies? There's a lot of backpedaling already.
Well, we had, as you know, in Birmingham today, the Workers' Party National Committee meeting, and we spent a lot of time discussing how this Trump victory impacts on Starmer's already pretty shaky. He's got this super parliamentary majority based on the lowest ever share of the vote. I mean, no government has ever been elected in Britain with a third of the people voting for it, and less than 1/5 of the total electorate voting for it. So his parliamentary majority gives a wholly misleading impression. I happen to think that Starmer's government and Starmer's own position is extremely precarious. But I think the guy who'll lose his job first is Idi Amin Dada, David Lammy. David Lammy's comments about Trump were on the scale of offensive off the charts. How he can be Britain's foreign secretary with Britain claiming to be in a special relationship
not so
with
special
the US,
anymore.
I think Starmer's going to have to move him, and if he moves him, that might set in motion some very interesting currents. So we'll keep a close watch on that.
Yes, so you mentioned we were in Birmingham indeed for the Workers' Party meeting. Around the corner was the Remembrance Sunday. We started right after it. And Karl Morris says, it's a poignant time, a time of reflection on the futility of war, but also a time that shows the greed of man, the power seekers, the supremacist ideology that causes war to further. It's time to stop the ongoing genocide in Gaza.
I mean,
did you know that this year's Remembrance Sunday coincided with the 400th day of genocide in Gaza?
How apt. Well, look, I'm going to make some closing remarks on those subjects, so thanks for now. I can definitively promise you I'll take you for chips after the show. Danny Simmons says, sense prevailed, and Donald Trump is the right man for the job. No wars during his last tenure. Well, great relations with Kim Jong-un, etc. Fake news didn't allow Trump to work with Putin. Now he won't care. I expect a deal to materialize. So do I. You're right, Danny, on all of those points. Bobby is in London. Let's make him the last caller. Bobby, welcome.
Thank you very much, great man, George.
Thank
George,
you.
every time I see you, you remind me with this great man, Tony Benn.
Thank you, sir.
Every time I see you, you remind me, and I feel very, very happy. And you are a great politician. I got 3 questions. I'm going to do it very quickly. First of all, about Remembering Day. When the first war and the Second World War started, they used to put the black people first, the Asian people second, and the rest of non-white people the third, and the fourth they were white people. So as far I am concerned, the people who won the war, they are people with color and not white people. And today, George, they never mentioned them. Never mentioned them. The other point I wanted to make, George, which is very important, and you said it before, that the Western world, which is white race country, they are between 10 or 13%. And non-white nation, they are probably 80 to 85%. Do you think, George, and this is my opinion, I spoke to other friend of mine and they agree with me, do you think the time has come for the world to be divided? The white race one side and non-white other side. Because the reason I am saying that, this Western country, which is the Western country means white, every time, George, since the end of the Second War, and they are attacking African, attacking Arabs, is not going to stop. And they doing it, George, to sell arms. And they always say there is a terrorism. They are not, there is no terrorism in non-white country. Terrorism is made in the Western country, i.e. the white race country. This is my view and the view probably of the media.
Well, let me respond to it. I wholly oppose your prescription of the separation of races, apart from anything else. It would tear me asunder from my own wife, from 5 of my 6 children. They'd be on one side and I'd be on the other. Clearly, I can't countenance any such thing. And in any case, it's not about race. You say that black people and brown people were pushed into the front lines of the First and Second World Wars. All of the working class, whatever color they were pushed into the front lines. The vast majority of the people who perished in the First World War and in the Second World War, actually, were white people. It's completely divisive and unnecessary and untrue to imply that it was otherwise. The USSR, of course, had many nationalities in it, and it lost 26 million people in the Second World War. The vast majority of them were white people. The people who landed on the beaches on D-Day in Normandy, on Gold, on Omaha, were American, Canadian, Australian, and British and Polish people, and they fought heroically in 1944 to begin the liberation of the western part of Europe. Overwhelmingly, they were white people. The First World War, the worst war of them all, of the 20th century, cost the lives of millions of people, most of them white. So it's wrong to racialize this question. We have to bring an end to war, or war will bring an end to us. If we can't find a way of resolving issues without war, war will be the end of us. Because now we are in possession of terrifying weaponry, which has no need to know what race or color you are, what religion you follow, what sexual orientation you are. That weaponry will bring about the end of all humanity and render all other issues, OTOs, render all other arguments meaningless, because there will be no humanity left to implement any kind of progress. And so it's my job to rally the maximum number of people to bring an end to war. And it is possible for us to do so. Simon from Weaponized News made the point I was going to make at this stage, that my good friend Yasser Arafat died 20 years ago tomorrow. I was there at his deathbed in the Perse Military Hospital in Paris, and when I came out into the early morning light, I was confronted by a battery of television cameras, the largest such battery I have ever seen. There must have been 500 or 1,000 television cameras outside that hospital. And I got to thinking, how amazing an achievement that this physically small man from a, in population terms, small nation of Palestine had so captivated the attention of the world that every television station in the whole world was there outside the hospital in which he had just passed away. And I took a few moments, 20 years ago tomorrow, with my good friend, Dr. Man Bashour of Beirut, Lebanon, who was with me. We were staying in what he described as modest hotel accommodation. It was as modest as any I have ever seen, let me put it that way. So I stood there contemplating the great achievement of my friend Yasser Arafat. He had made the Palestine question eternal and central to world events. And so it has remained. The Holy Land is not the Holy Land for nothing. It's important land. It's Terra Santa, holy land. And Yasser Arafat always used to say to me, we will not go into the museum. Rather impolitely, he'd say, we are not the Red Indians, who were neither red nor Indian. We are not the Red Indians. We will not go into the museum. We are a live people with a live cause that we will carry with us until the end, until victory. He used to said that to me hundreds of times, and it came true. Palestine is the number one issue on the international political agenda. Imagine. It is the moral center of the world. And the good citizens of Amsterdam, who this week stood up for the Palestinian people, deserve our eternal respect, and I salute them. It's been marvelous for me. We are now on 499,804 subscribers. Can we make it to 500 before Wednesday? Surely. See you on Wednesday for the midweek Mother of All Talk Shows. Good night.